Well, good morning, neighbor. If you're not joining us in the morning, good whatever time of day it is for you, darling. I hope you're having a good day. We've been pretty focused and some would argue a little serious. The first few things that we've done, I thought maybe a little touch of the light side today. And this story that I'm going to tell you is, I shared in this little book of mine, The Life I Have Lived and Those Who Came Before Me. I love talking about those who came before me. And the beautiful thing about my generation is we came up right on the tail end, the very tail end of the old way of life. And this is what I mean by that. My granddaddy was a sharecropper. His son, my daddy, was raised sharecropper. Now, for those of you that have not read the book, don't know what sharecropping is, basically you have a farmer with 50 to 100 acres maybe, he's got to farm it. And whether he was injured or whether he had a small family, whatever the case was, he had more crop to get in than he had hands to get it in. Well, he would have this little extra house on his place, see. Now, it wasn't nothing to write home about. If you want a good idea of what these homes might look like, come up to Cage Cove in Tennessee sometime and drive that area and look at the homes. And the homes that my daddy and his daddy were raised up in were probably not even as nice as those. Probably take those houses and downgrade a couple times. And so this farmer would have an extra house on his place, and he would hire a man to come and bring his family, live in that house. He would give him 5 acres, to plant for himself. The kicker was he also had to help Boss Hogg get his crop in on time. Now, me and you, if we lose our job, we just go down the road here and get us another job. We can keep our house, keep our car, everything, and we just commute. Sharecropper now, if he lost his job, he could literally lose the roof over his head. Then he had to take his family and find somewhere else to go. So the sharecropper had a double burden on himself at all times. He had to farm that 5 acres for him and his family, but he better make sure that Boss Hogg got his stuff in on time too. Now, my granddaddy, he did 2 things his whole life. He worked in the fields, and finally he had a sunstroke, and the doctor said, if you go out there again, you're probably going to kill yourself. And he drove a taxi. Only 2 things he ever did. Now, when I was growing up, he was still in the fields. And he would let his grandyoungers go out in the fields with him from time to time and help him with whatever it was he had to do that day. The story I'm fixing to tell you is in this book, and I will never forget it. And we're going to see another example of life lessons taught through the word that these new ages nowadays hate, discipline. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So, Mama and Daddy would let me go spend the night with Papa and Mama. And we didn't need an alarm clock because Mama would be up in the kitchen fixing breakfast way before daylight. And honey, the smell of bacon, eggs, and biscuit, and fresh cantaloupe, all of that will come wafting under your nose and just lift you on up out of the bed. We didn't have an alarm clock. We didn't know what such things were. And we got up on this day, and we were going to a place right outside of West Point, Georgia, on Highway 19. I wish I could remember where it was. I'd go back and see what was there. Probably a subdivision or something nowadays. But we pulled up into that place to get to it. You turn off of Highway 19 there onto a dirt road, and there was a lot of bushes and stuff up. You couldn't see the fields from the road because of the growth. You went through a gate there. As we went through that gate, we were driving up where we were going to be working at. I noticed something right off the bat. On my left and on my right, there were cantaloupes. I mean, field fresh cantaloupes for a long, long ways. Probably half a football field on both sides, maybe a whole football field. And there they were, cantaloupes everywhere. I do remember Papa calling those a type cantaloupe called a rocky road cantaloupe. You farmers know what I'm talking about. I wouldn't know a rocky road from a sandy beach cantaloupe. But you'll know in just a minute why I remember the name of it. But we saw all these cantaloupes, and I had this really bright idea. I said, Papa, can we eat one of those cantaloupes? I mean, he's got 1 million. He'll never sell them all. He ain't going to miss one. That was my thinking. My papa, he had a real quick answer for me. He said, no, you didn't plant them. You didn't work it. Keep your hands off of them. They don't belong to you. Very simple, right? Right. Very simple. We got to the other side of those cantaloupes, went through another little stand of trees there, and there was many things planted. That farmer had peanuts. He had okra. And today, what he had for us was butter beans. Butter beans. You ever picked a row of butter beans, neighbor? I'm guessing you probably haven't. And to make it, challenging and fun, I guess, Papa had these 5-gallon plastic buckets. Your goal was to fill that bucket up. I'm going to testify to you that the boy that I used to be, really believed those buckets had false bottoms in them. You couldn't fill them up. You pick butter beans and throw them in the bucket, pick butter beans, throw them in the bucket, pick butter beans, throw them in the bucket, and you look in that bucket after a while, it wouldn't even be a quarter full, and you'd pick again and pick again and pick again, you look in, it'd be barely half full. All this under a clear sky with the sun beating down on you, and you get aggravated, you'll pick faster, I've got to fill this bucket up. You couldn't fill these buckets up. At least that's the way the boy I used to be thought about it. Well, by dinner time, you was ready for a break. The youngest nowadays couldn't follow me around. Bless them, Lord. They could put them in a field of cotton and tell them to pick one row, and they'd have a stroke by the end of that first row. Anyhow, we were on butter beans. And my granddaddy, bless his heart, we had an hour for lunch. He would tell us kids, bring your lunch. He always had us to bring our own ice water or whatever, a little thermos of some kind. It was after I was grown before I found out why he never shared his with ours. We never were allowed to sip out of his. Because he brought, how can I say this? What about we call it iced tea on steroids? They give you a hint. In other words, Papa asked me one time to take a sip of some home brew that he made. He said, it's blackberry. And I thought anything that's blackberry in it can't be all bad, right? But I found out pretty quick that I was messing with something that would go down like a milkshake and then blow the seat and slap out of your drawers, is what I found out. So we had our own drink, our own dinner. He said, you boys go off over into somewhere and eat. And he said, you got an hour? Be sure you can hear me when I call you back to work. On this particular day, we got done eating pretty quick, and we found ourselves having wandered out into the middle of that field of fresh cantaloupe. And we found ourselves looking around to find where Papa was. Of course, he was concentrating on his iced tea. And we knew we were in the clear. Now, y'all listen. We only meant to eat one cantaloupe. Scout on it. We only meant to eat one. But we ate 3. And by the time we got done with that third one, Papa's voice was heard. All right, boys, let's go to work. Of course, we got red clay all over our hands, and I guess we was trying to make it where we wouldn't smell like the cantaloupe we'd been eating. And we went straight to our buckets and got back on our row. All was going well. Till we spent a while under that hot sun on a clear day. And that cantaloupe is rolling around in our bellies, arguing with the dinner we just ate. And our stomachs got tired of the arguing and just flushed all of it out of us. Is that a pretty way of saying we were puking our guts out? I thought it was, anyways. And there we were, buckets to our side and all of our dinner on the ground. In this book, I say, we were providing nutrients for the plants that were growing the butter beans for you to eat. You like that? I thought you would. And we just said, we got sick about the same time. There was a cousin with me. I cannot remember which one, and they won't admit it, none of them. And all of a sudden, a shadow came over me, and I thought, oh, a cloud, thank God. And I looked up, and I saw it wasn't a cloud at all. It was my granddad. I'm not going to use the verbiage he used in those days, but he's looking at the contents of our bellies on the ground there. And he said, you boys been in cantaloupes, ain't you? Well, what are we going to say? The evidence is on the ground in front of us. How are you going to deny that? And he provided us with an outdoor bathroom revival that I have never forgotten. And that's not where it ended. At the end of the day, we still had to pick that bucket full of butter beans, you hear me? There wasn't no sitting down in the shade because you got stupid and took something you was told not to take and then threw it up. No, you're going to finish that roll of butter beans. You're going to fill that bucket up. And at the end of the day, he took us back to the fella that owned the place, and he always gave us a little spending money, for helping out. And he took us back to him and stood us up in front of him and made us tell him what we did. And he said, you won't be paying them today. They ate their money out there in the field. And the fellas even tried to say, now, Albert, come on now. I mean, you did silly stuff when we was their age. And I'm going to tell you what Papa said now. He said, oh, hell no. They didn't plant them. They didn't work them. It didn't belong to them, and they took them. They stole from you, and you're not going to pay them today. No spending money for the weekend. And that wasn't all. He took me home then and told my daddy what happened. Now, honey, you talk about a bathroom revival. Soon after Papa told him that, he ain't got out of sight in that truck he used to drive till I was in the bathroom repenting. And Brother Leather was doing the preaching. And my daddy was leading the choir. You going to do that again? Are you ever going to? Can I ask you, mamas and daddies, if there's any of y'all that's in my mom and daddy generation left, were y'all deaf? Are you going to do that again? And we just said, no. I don't think you heard us because you just kept right on swatting. Why? No, I wasn't going to do it again. Neighbor, it was a long time before I wanted a piece of cantaloupe even at the breakfast table after that day. One last lesson Papa had to teach us. We went to that same field the next week. Drove by them cantaloupes again. Nothing was said. Nothing needed to be said. We drove past the butter beans, thank God. Papa said, boys, we're going to be doing a little something different today. And we pulled up next to about 7 or 8 rows of okra. We get out of the truck. He gives each of us a knife. He takes a knife. He puts on a pair of gloves, which I didn't really notice in the beginning. He said, I got this row here, you got this row, and you got that row. We're going to cut all the way down. Same 5-gallon buckets, right? Have you ever tried to cut okra with your bare hands? You haven't? Well, can I testify to you that you won't cut 2 stalks before that okra on your bare hand will have your hands stinging almost like little bee stings. And my hands were just on fire. And I looked over and noticed my granddaddy had a pair of gloves on. He was just cutting to beat the band. Boy, he was going on down his row of okra. And I said, Papa, you got any more of those gloves in your truck? He said, well, I believe we do. I said, can we have a pair? My hand is killing me. And he backed up and looked at me. And he thought for a second. He said, well, I thought about that. But then I thought, if I let you boys cut a whole row of okra without gloves, maybe at lunchtime when I say stay out of the cantaloupes, you'll actually stay out of them. You new agers, y'all are just living right now. Y'all just bouncing off the walls. But you know what? We stayed out in the cantaloupes. And yes, he did give us gloves. And yes, we finished cutting that okra. And yes, I helped him again many, many, many times. I miss those days. I got a small taste of the way my papa had to live his life raising 7 kids as a sharecropper. He couldn't do the things that Boss Hogg could do for his family. My daddy got his high school education after the Korean War on the GI Bill. My daddy's parents couldn't afford for him to go to school. Eating was more important than education, because if you die from malnutrition, you can't get no education anyway, right? Sharecropper kids had to work first, and then with time left over, they could go to school. That's the world that I was very fortunate to learn a little bit about as a small boy, helping my granddad in those fields. I've often said, what we need to do for these whippersnappers today, let's load them up, let's take them up to Delaware, maybe the southernmost part of Pennsylvania. There's a huge Amish community. Let's farm them out in twos to Amish families and leave them there for the summer. You're going to work just like they work, because they work just like the sharecropper worked. You're going to keep their customs. You're going to be subject to their discipline. You're going to have their work ethic. You're not going to be allowed to have a cell phone with you. You're not going to be allowed to have a tablet, a watch, none of that. You're going to have you and the clothes on your back for the whole summer. If you come back from that summer and you still think you're being deprived, then I don't know what else to do with you. You see, I will always honor the people who came before me. They taught me things that I would have been a better man today if I had always adhered to the things they tried to teach me. Hopefully, I'll pass that along to some of you. 1 out of every 100 will listen. But there's a place for honesty. There's a place for loyalty. There's a place for work ethic. Earn it before you burn it. Don't burn it on my billfold. Earn your own. You got 2 hands, you got 2 feet, there's something you can do. Well, I better stop right there. You can tell I don't regret those who came before me, because they made it possible for me to be who I am today, to even be doing this little video. You dream and run after it. You put a lot of sweat equity into it. And never think anybody owes you anything free just because of your circumstance. You can rise above your circumstance. In my opinion, if you'll lean on the holy God who said he would never leave you nor forsake you. I've been at my best when I remember that. I've been at my worst when I did not. That's all the time I got today. Thank you so much for listening to this little old story. We'll have some more. We're going to have a lot of fun. The next time we meet, though, we're going to talk about fathers and Father's Day. I hope you'll join us, okay? You have a great day. God bless your hearts. I love you. Bye-bye.